guys, so you should be able to see on your screen a PowerPoint to the left or screen left, and then my face, ugly mug, waving at you. Now, I'm a dance practitioner, but I've worked across performing arts, theatre, film, all sorts of aspects of the arts, I suppose. And so although I'm talking from a dance perspective, because that's my expertise as a choreographer and as a dance maker, I will try and sort of pull on my knowledge of other spheres as well, particularly in film and things like that, that might be of interest to people who are coming from different disciplines. Now, you can see here on my topic is sustainability in dance. Or I could also say sustainability in the performing arts or sustainability in the arts, because I think some of these things that I'm talking about are very much current and very much on the lips of most people in the arts at the moment, particularly if you run an arts organisation, which I do. So I'm artistic director of a company called 2/3 Sky, TWO, spelt all one word, 2/3 Sky Dance. And I've run that since 2005, so it's 16 years we've been running. But my career spans 25 years across the performing arts, first of all as a dance performer, and then as a teacher and a maker, and then eventually artistic director of my own company and making work. So hopefully some of this will be relevant to you and what you're doing. So first of all, what is sustainability? And I think sustainability is an interesting one because it is talking about what we can do, or what you guys can do as students, to think about how you create a sustainable career. And that's in lots of different ways and lots of different dimensions, okay? So if we think about just sort of academically for a moment, what we mean by sustainability, it's a buzzword that's been around for the last 15 years, that is on every vision statement I've ever read, and every Arts Council application I've looked at. So basically, traditionally, there is a 3-pillar model to sustainability. So this is what the UN would, how they define sustainability. And that is economic sustainability feeds into or feeds down to environmental sustainability and cultural and social sustainability. So that is, if a society or a country has economic growth, then apparently, allegedly, that will mean that they are much more equipped as a society to be able to put together initiatives that protect the environment. And so that is how the 3-pillar model work. And out of that comes social stability and cohesion. We all know that that as an idea over the last 15 years has been a mitigated failure, as China, Brazil, the Northern Hemisphere, USA, India have expanded hugely in their industrial activity to feed capitalism. And with that has come enormous economic growth, but that doesn't necessarily equate to good, sustainable, environmental societies or countries, or way in which people work, way in which industry works. And it also doesn't equate to the gap between the rich and the poor becoming more equalised. So actually the 3-pillar model is being critiqued, and I know that the COP26, obviously we all know about the COP26 Glasgow conference coming up, and this model is being critiqued. And one of the, you may already know, but one of the speakers will be Paul James, and he talks about, with his team of collaborators, talks about the circles of sustainability. So this is basically saying, depending on the context that you're in, how can economics, ecology and politics and culture work together in a reflexive way that is dynamic, that is, what's the word, inventive, creative, in being able to stop climate change, but also promote economic growth. So it's a much more dynamic model, and I think it's something that that will be discussed over the COP26. I hope it will be discussed over the COP26 in order to be able to try and put in some strategies that will help industry and, in our sector, the arts, become more sustainable. Yeah, so I was kind of considering these things in relation to my own artistic career, and I was thinking, actually, how has the ecology of dance or the arts helped me to sustain my career, and what am I going to do to kind of improve my environmental credentials, I suppose, and to minimize my impact, my environmental impact. So I looked at it in 3 ways. I thought, well, actually, I had to make a living as a dancer, so that's economic stability. And I aim to not just survive, but to grow and thrive. So that was my aim. But also I prioritized creative sustainability, and I have always done this. I've always focused on actually what are the projects that make me tick, as opposed to just taking work for the sake of it. So I think that's an important kind of negotiation that we have to make as artists. What is creatively fulfilling? What is meaningful? What are our own individual goals and targets in relation to the way in which we engage with arts? So how do we have a creatively sustainable career? And then finally, and I don't think it should be at the bottom really, but that's the way I bullet pointed it, there's going to be much more emphasis on all arts organisations to be, and individuals, to be environmentally sustainable in the way that we operate, either in terms of touring work, making film, the way that venues, art galleries, art centres run, where we get our energy sources from, how we reuse, repurpose and recycle things like sets, props, costumes, etc. So there's going to be a whole raft of things that are going to be I suppose forced, but also something that public opinion is going to move in that direction towards, that makes arts organisations much more environmentally sustainable. I think artists have championed, I think artistic practice has championed environmental sustainability for many, many years, like since the sort of civil rights movement. I think there's been a whole relationship between social justice, arts practice and protest, and environmental sustainability. I think those 3 things have always been in the mix, yeah. But it's now coming to the forefront, I think, in the popular collective mind. That from my opinion. So this is from a dance perspective, but let's try and think more broadly about this. In terms of economic sustainability, to survive in the arts is not enough. Yeah, you have to thrive, you have to grow. So if you want a family and you want a house and you want to live in a comfortable and not live from hand to mouth, you have to think beyond just survival. And I've got sort of 4 tips really from my 25 years in the arts that I think that students can maybe take away and think about and abandon or go with. And the first tip for economic sustainability, I think, is to draw upon the professional bodies that support your activity. Now, in my case, we have an enviable infrastructure for dance in this country: dance performance, physical theatre, physical performance, that kind of work. Experimental practice. We have an enviable infrastructure, and that is through the professional bodies that support dance. But there are lots of different venues and agencies and support networks for other art forms in this country. We value the arts, I think, although it's often suffered cuts over the years and it doesn't seem within certain political parties being valued. I think as a nation we value the arts. As a populace, I suppose, we value the arts. So for me, just to give you a few examples, the professional bodies that have really seen me through these 25 years have been One Dance UK. Now, they are a national advocacy body for dance, and they work across all physical performance. So it might be acting as well as dancing. And they very much see the actor, the dancer, the performing artist as an athlete, as a physical being, not just an artist, if you like, just an artist, but not only an artist. So they've developed a thing called the Healthier Dance Program. You could call that the Healthier Performer Program, actually. It's very much focused on how do performers stay healthy physically, things like injury prevention, interventions to prevent injury, looking at well-being and mental health. All sorts of issues that affect the artist in their practice, in their day-to-day practice. So they've been very much championing the physical health and the mental well-being of performers. So they're a fantastic organisation, and check them out. You can become a member of their One Dance UK. You can get a membership, a student membership, or an organisational membership, and it's not that expensive. So I often say to my students, get your nan to buy you a One Dance UK student membership for your Christmas present or your birthday present, because they have loads of newsletters and tons of resources that can really help the performer when they graduate. Then the second one for me is People Dancing, which is the Foundation for Community Dance. And again, they work with a whole range of performers that are not just in dance, particularly things like dance and disability or performance and disability, looking at issues of diversity, whether that be ethnic diversity or whether it be diversity in a whole multitude of fields. And I think that what I love about People Dancing, or what used to be the Foundation for Community Dance, is they are always on the cutting edge of political issues. They're always, really testing the edges of understanding and thinking in performance, and their resources are quite extraordinary. They have podcasts, interviews. They even run an insurance scheme for performers, so you can get your public liability insurance really cheaply from them. So if you are an actor or a dancer or working in the arts as an arts administrator or whatever, and you need public liability insurance, People Dancing is a great place to go and check out. Yeah. So obviously we have also a national dance agency network, and when I say agent, in different art forms or different spheres, the word agent or agency means different things. So a fashion agency means something different to a acting agency, to something different to a dance agency. So agency in a dance context can be something like the Mandy Network, where you get a gig on a music video. But in this context, the National Dance Agency Network are venues or hubs where performers and artists can get together and initiate ideas and find collaborators and incubate ideas and work. So we have in Bedfordshire would be covered by Dance East, which is in Ipswich, and they have the Jerwood Dance House, which is a whole series of theatre studios in Ipswich, and it's a really beautiful building. They have a really strong connection with the University of Bedfordshire, so if you wanted to do some work experience at Dance East in performance, because the university have such a great links with Dance East, if you said you were a University of Bedfordshire student, I'm sure they would open their doors to things like internships or work experience. Fantastic venue. My end of the region, because I'm between Northamptonshire and Bedfordshire, my dance agency would be in Nottingham, which is Dance 4. They have an international remit, and what they are brilliant at is promoting international experimental theatre and dance. People like Akram Khan, Anna Teresa de Kiersmaker, all brought young experimental scratch pieces to the Not Dance Festival at Dance 4 when they were very early on in their career. So, some big names started off working at Dance 4, making short pieces, small pieces, laboratory work, at Dance 4, they very much encourage creative initiatives. And then there are a whole series of different artistic hubs across the country. There's Dance Exchange in Birmingham, which is at the Birmingham Hippodrome. You've got Southeast Dance in Brighton, and obviously Brighton is a complete hub of creative activity in film, and particularly the visual arts, installation art, that kind of thing. So Southeast Dance promotes a lot of experimental installation work, as well as dance. So yeah, I could go on. So tip 1, make sure that you find out from your tutors who the professional bodies are in your art form and get connected with them as soon as possible. Do summer schools, do internships or apprenticeships or work experience, become members of those bodies, sign up to certain journals or newsletters, yeah? So you are as informed as possible, as early as possible before you graduate. Tip 2, and this goes for anyone working in production or in performing arts or in dance, try and think about having a mixed portfolio when you leave. Try not to put your eggs all in one basket. Try and think about having as many skills as you can, or equipping yourself with as many skills as you can, so that you can shift from one area to the other to get more experience and to get more work under your belt, I suppose. So on my slide here, I've put having a mixed portfolio of found, created and commissioned projects. So found, just to break those down, found projects might be, for example, I applied for a PhD. I saw it in the Times Higher. It was a funded PhD at the University of Northampton, and very luckily I got, from the back of that application, a 0.5 academic dance post. So I applied for that, and it was a found position, and I kind of, on the back of that, got some more work. So that's always good to know, that even if you apply for one thing, it may lead you to something else. Even if you don't get or do get that particular position, somebody might offer you something else because you make those connections. So that's found work. And then there's created work. So this is where you have an idea, a vision. It might be a show, it might be a feature film, a short feature, it might be a script, it might be a play that you want to write or put on or direct. So you have this idea or this vision in your head, and at that point you have to realize it. So you have to plan and realize it. So this is a creative project, and in that sense you would have to go out and try and get it funded in order to get your collaborators together and get that work funded. Yeah. So for example, I did a piece that was funded by the ACE. I wanted to take over, there's a medieval town near me that was celebrating its 600-year anniversary of when the kind of main buildings in this town were built, and I wanted to do a piece that celebrated that town and that architecture, because I'm really interested in site-specific work. So I went to the Arts Council, I went to English Heritage, I went to the local town council, and I said, look, are you interested in the whole town being involved in a celebratory promenade performance that's filmed in your beautiful buildings? And they were really up for it, and we kind of got our heads together, and it became a piece called Eventide, which was all performed by 70 of the townsfolk with torches, by torchlight. Yeah, and it was the most incredible experience of my career because of the generosity of the community I was working with and the fun we had, you know. So that was a created piece, and it took about 1.5 years to put together. And then you get commissioned projects. So you've got found, created, commissioned. So commissioned projects are when an organisation or a company or a producer comes to you and says, I really like your work, I've got an idea for a project. They give you a brief, and they commission you to make that work. So commissioning is much more prevalent in visual arts. So someone commissions you to make a sculpture or a painting or whatever for a particular space. In dance, normally a commission is for a particular event. So recently in 2019, and I'll show you an example, the Richard Alston Dance Company, who were based in London, approached us, Toothless Sky, and said, we're bringing our tour to the Royal and Derngate in Northampton, and we'd like you to create a piece as a curtain raiser prior to the performance, utilising our dancers and your dancers with young people from the local area. And so we created the Alston Inspired project, which was Arts Council, luckily Arts Council backed, and we auditioned gifted and talented young people who wanted to go into dance to work with the Richard Alston Dance Company and with our dancers together, and I was project lead on that. So yeah, that was a really amazing experience working with Richard Alston as a seminal UK choreographer, you know, and working with the technical crew at the Royal and Derngate to create the lighting and the sound and everything. It was a really amazing experience. So if you don't mind, whilst you're making a cup of tea or whatever, I will put on that project with these young people. They're between 11 years old and 18 years old, so it's a mix. And yeah, you can have a little look and kick back and watch this. Okay, folks, thank you for sitting through that. So what was interesting about that project was we kind of worked with Zoe Keating's music, which was called Murmuration, and the whole, I should have said this perhaps before you watched it, but the whole piece was about the murmuration of starlings in the sky and the way they flock and gather and coalesce, and that's how the kind of company made the work. And there's one young dancer there, Angelo, who is the guy with glasses. He's actually on the University of Bedfordshire first year course, and I saw him this morning actually on a Zoom call, so I was really excited to see him continuing his dance activities. Oh, 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 6-year-old. Is it done? Done? Do you want to put that back? Thank you. Oh, it might be her ringing again, so just press green. Okay, off you go. No. Okay, bye. Bye. Sorry about that. So yes, anyway, let's move on. So tip 3, there's only 4 tips. So tip 3 is about establishing relationships with artists, and I think this is something that students can do, and you're probably doing right now, is starting to find allegiances with people who have the same sort of likes, dislikes, values as you have, yeah, and the same sort of artistic vision as you. And I think that can start straight away, people who you just click with. And over the last sort of 20 years, I've very much established a team of people I return to, who we have a shorthand, we have a way of working that just sort of fits, it sort of slots together. I know in music, people say that there's a chemistry in a band, you know, a band either works or it doesn't. But I think with dance or any art form, I think that is probably the same. There are people you click with, people who you can rely on, who always deliver. And I think that that's important right now as a student, to try to find those people in your student cohort, people that you click with, because you'll probably come back to those people after you graduate and when you want to make your own work or initiate projects, or you have a project on the go. Yeah, so I'm gonna move on. You've seen that. And then probably my last tip before maybe we have a little break is evaluate your goals. So right now you should be thinking about you know, as a student, you should be thinking about what are your ultimate goals and targets for when you graduate. Is it to become a performer, for example, a performer for camera, an actor on the stage or screen or whatever? And actually you've got to think, well, what skills do I need to equip myself with in order that I'm absolutely on point when I graduate? Yeah, so for example, for me, it was about actually, how do I maintain my fitness? How am I at peak fitness when I go to auditions? So when I was an auditioning or jobbing dancer, I had to make sure that I was kind of I was familiar with the most current styles and the most current kind of work, but also fit myself to be able to sustain an audition, because auditions are often quite strenuous and quite hard, and they're quite long. And so you know, it's how can I sort of make sure that I'm fit enough and strong enough to be able to handle myself in an audition environment. Yeah. But evaluating your goals doesn't sort of stop there. As a sort of freelance artist, as a jobbing dancer, I would evaluate my goals of where I wanted to be every 6 months. So I'd get a large sheet of paper out and I'd sort of say, okay, I need to think about doing more yoga for my flexibility, or I would think about perhaps enhancing my teaching skills. So I might need to do some teaching practice, maybe some work experience with some companies to try and get my teaching skills up. So I would evaluate those skills and think, oh, what do I need to do in the next 6 months to try and up my employment, yeah, and equip myself more. So that's a journey that starts now when you're at university, but it doesn't stop. Whenever you're in your artistic life, you've got to think, well, how am I going to continue that journey and continue evaluating where I am? and obviously evaluation is a big part of the funding structure as well. So every project you get that gets funded, you have to write an evaluation report afterwards. So evaluation and being reflective the whole time, what worked, what didn't work, constantly kind of evaluating your where you're going next is part of being an artist, I think, and is important in terms of your own journey, and particularly dealing with challenges like the pandemic. We've all had to reevaluate the way we work because of the pandemic. In fact, everybody has, but particularly the performing arts has had to evaluate that. So, you know, and we have to be flexible and resilient and think about new ways in which we present ourselves in this new digital age. So yeah, evaluation, I think, is a really key skill to have and a key thing to do as part of your career path, I suppose. It should be embedded within the way you work. Yeah, so that's tip number 4. Shall we have just 5 minutes of a little cup of tea and maybe a sandwich or whatever you need, and then we'll come back and I've got a couple more videos before we wrap up, a few questions and things that I want to pose to you guys before we wrap. Is that going to be okay? Hopefully, Rachel, that is. I'm seeing a kind of silent nod from everybody. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. So guys, just let me know when you come back with your cup of tea or your, just let me know when you're back. If you could just give me a, yeah, it's Madison, I'm back.
I'm actually back.
Well done.
We're all back.
Thank you, Alex. Genius.
Yeah, I'm here too.
Is that Beverly?
Yeah.
Hi, is Simona around? Do I take that as a silent yes? Right, brilliant. I'm just going to crack on, and if people are running back in with cups of coffee, then I understand. So I'm going to quickly scroll back. Unfortunately, with my Stream Deck thing that I've got, that I have to scroll through each slide to get to where I want to be. So I apologise. I'm going to just scroll through again. This is like death by PowerPoint, isn't it? Sorry. Where are we? Yeah, I've done the 4 tips. We've done that. Tick. And we're here. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit more about environmental sustainability, which is going to be, by the time most of you graduate, is going to be really a priority for artists and organisations, as I said before. So getting kind of on top of it. So if you can, for undergrads or postgrads who are not really au fait with this sort of environmental issues, that the COP26 Glasgow conference is a really important one to follow in the press or online in the next few weeks, because I think, I mean, the plenaries start next week, and then obviously through the next sort of 3 weeks they will be thrashing out hopefully what's going to happen to humanity and the world, which, you know, yeah, and it's a bit of a last chance saloon. So I think following that will be really insightful in the direction that we're all going to be going in. So just a quick because obviously you are academics as well, just a quick kind of definition of what environmental sustainability might be in relation to the way the UN sees it in the next coming weeks. So I'll, if you forgive me for reading this out, it says meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Okay, so what we do today as artists should have a positive legacy in relation to the future communities, and that is in regards to the way in which we make work, in terms of the resources we use, but also the impact of our artistic work on the awareness of climate change, or the awareness of our environment, or the way in which we treat people. So sort of social cohesion and social justice, you know. So it says today there are almost 140 developing countries in the world seeking ways of meeting their development needs, but with increasing threat of climate change, concrete efforts must be made to ensure development today does not negatively affect future generations. And I just wanted to talk quickly, I'll come back to that last slide. I'll talk quickly about artists who are actually actively doing that now. So there's a fantastic, absolutely fantastic choreographer / director who makes what I would call dance theatre, so work that crosses over text and movement. Absolutely extraordinary work, called Crystal Pite, and she works with a company called Kid Pivot. She's Canadian. Her work's often shown at Sadler's Wells in London, and on Sky Arts, the play Revisor was directed. I'm just going to shut that door. Was directed and reconfigured with dancers for Sky Arts. So if you get to see Revisor by Crystal Pite, it is the most extraordinary piece of theatre. And her company is, as an international touring company, has got an aim to be carbon neutral. And so she tries to offset flights, to use lorries that work with vegetable oil and recycled oils rather than petrol or diesel. She tries to recycle and repurpose sets and props so that not continually using new materials, but to actually repurpose things. as much as possible. And also Kid Pivot, they have a thing called One Day for the Climate, One Day for the Climate project, which is where 1 day a year, the whole company give 1 day of their salary to a sustainable or an environmental project, a project that is going to make a positive impact, particularly in Canada. So I think it's a really interesting and groundbreaking kind of way of working. And obviously they are a big company, they're not a small independent like my company is, but I think we can all learn from having those aspirations. Obviously, I mean, in those first 2 points on the slide, I think that environmental protest itself is becoming more performative in the way that it's trying to get publicity. So things like Extinction Rebellion and Insulate Britain are doing publicity stunts to try and, you know, gluing themselves to the M25 and all of this kind of thing. My feeling with that, and this is only my personal feeling, is to what extent that performance is winning over public opinion. You know, is it winning over public opinion, or is it actually having a detrimental effect? You know, those questions are obviously going to be thrashed out again in the next 3 or 4 weeks. But there are also artists where the natural world and appreciating the natural world is actually central to the work itself. And there's a brilliant artist called Rosemary Lee who makes installation work and what I would call performance art, although she sees herself as a choreographer. I would say it was more performance art. And she makes works on cross-generational companies. So she may have a performer who's, you know, 8 years old and a performer who's 88 years old and everything in between. And she tries to bring those communities together to create an event or a site-specific work or a film that is interfacing with the environment or interfacing with a particular space or a particular landscape. And she has just initiated a project called Stand By Me, which is about the way in which we interface with the trees around us and the public green spaces around us. And so that's actually at the heart of the content of her work, if you like. So environmental issues are at the heart of her practice. Yeah, so it's different ways in which we can think about environmental sustainability as artists. Yeah, well, I definitely recommend you try and look at Crystal Pite's work because it's extraordinary. Sort of another bit of kind of video watching. In 2013, I made a dance for camera, so a dance film with 2 extraordinary dancers, Daryl Aldridge and Laura Gibson, called The Water Rail. And it was my response to an archaeological and natural landscape called Stanwick Lakes Nature Reserve in Northamptonshire. And in particular, the remains of a 2-kilometre railway track. Now, as you can see in the picture to the left, it's now a very, very straight path, but you can still see the sort of archaeological remnants of that 19th century railway that was there. It was one of the first railways to be built to London, actually, from through the Nen Valley. And so this piece was all storyboarded for film. So I, myself and Gareth, the filmmaker, went on a reconnaissance through the nature reserve and we took photos, if I just quickly scroll through, and storyboarded how, there's one of the photos, storyboarded how we were going to plot the choreography and the performance through that, across that sort of 2-kilometre run. And so we took different kind of images along the way of images that we thought would be interesting, or landscapes that we thought that it would be interesting for the dancers to interface with or to make. So for example, this wonderful railway bridge that was completely crumbling and overtaken by kind of ivy and thorns and things. It was really amazing. Yeah, so I thought I'd show you that that piece, I think one of the things we noticed and we were sensitive to as a team was when we were working in a natural landscape, how do we not negatively impact upon it by moving our cameras and moving our lighting equipment and dancing through that landscape, just being mindful of the landscape we were in. So for example, we had to reshoot a particular shot that was in this huge field going up a hill because there were nesting swans in the field, and we felt as if our presence there was going to really disturb them, and so we went back a few weeks later when they had gone, and we could then film kind of more freely. And the same with, there was another site along that stretch where there was sort of quite delicate fauna that was plants that were growing in the wetland there, so we had to wait until the wetland had dried out and that had grown up a little bit before we could go back and actually film. So it's about being mindful and sensitive to the environment you're in when you're making sighted work in such a beautiful place. But I thought you could kick back and maybe watch this. It's about just under 10 minutes long, so yeah, I'll show you the film and then we'll get to the last section of my talk.
We can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, for those who were kind of interested in film and production and things, one of the things that we found was most important in trying to tell the story of that work was actually, beyond the choreography, was actually the sound, and how the sound became a sort of almost another performer in the work, because obviously it's a non-verbal work and a lot of dance is non-verbal. We had to communicate in different ways, so the Foley became really important, and we went back to the site with the sound engineer and created a lot of the sound by walking through brambles and by all of the footfall through the sand was not actually the dancer's footfall, that was created after the event and then layered in post. So yeah, so that was quite an interesting process for me as a choreographer, to actually see how sound can really enhance what it is you're doing on screen. And the music, I created the music for the work, and sort of created it with the Foley to become a kind of complete soundscape. And again, that was a really new and exciting kind of dimension to the film production process that I'd never ever experienced before as a choreographer. So actually, I think what's great about all of these processes and creative projects that you engage in, they can really teach you other skills and also really push you outside of your comfort zone in a way that perhaps you didn't realize when you first had the idea. So you find that you end up challenging yourself. I did on that process. Yeah, you find that you end up challenging yourself, because I tried to find music for this work, but I ended up I felt as if creating something was more appropriate, and obviously you don't have the copyright issue if you create it yourself as a team. So that is also something that you have to be mindful of when you're using film. I'm sure everyone on Instagram knows this, you know, using music that you're allowed to use or not allowed to use on your Instagram videos and stuff is a daily issue, you know. Yeah, so really kind of in the last part of this, really, if you can stick with listening to me, is, if I quickly go to my next, is sort of creative sustainability. And for me, this is where you've got that fine balance between making a living and doing things that are creatively fulfilling. So it's that thing of, you know, I always think of an actor doing a kind of a commercial for Fairy Liquid, and you know, a Shakespeare play, and which would they rather, you know, which would they find more challenging? Maybe they would find those two things challenging, but for different reasons. But I think it's about saying to yourself, well, what is it I want to do, and what is it I have the opportunity to do in order to kind of keep my career going and to make a living, and but to survive and sustain your own kind of creative imagination. And for me, apart from evaluating your goals all the time, constantly thinking, where am I think for me, it was about establishing a unique selling point. Now, I hate that. I kind of hate USP. I hate that it's a very commercial, corporate kind of word. But actually, as an artist, you have to think, what is unique about what it is you do? And it is that you package and you sell to funders, or you do a pitch to a producer, or you package in terms of your show reel for agency, you know, for agency work. So it's about thinking what is unique about what it is you do, or what it is you are. And for me, because I'm a dancer, it was about a movement style, but that might be an acting technique, or a particular style of delivery, or it might be a particular look that you have, or a particular methodology that with which you approach your work. So I think it is about understanding what's unique about you, and then packaging that in a way that's going to be interesting and exciting for others to engage with. It might be quirky, it might be you know, highly stylized, or it might be physical, or it might be collaborative, or you know, whatever your unique take on your work is. It's about articulating that really clearly for others so that they can become a stakeholder in what you're doing and invest in what you're doing. Whether you're a performer or whether you are a creator, you know, a company director or a playwright or whatever. So yeah, so for me it was about establishing a particular methodology, and it took a while for me to understand what that was, maybe even 10 years to understand what that was. So I worked with different companies prior, as a dancer, prior to sort of, I auditioned and worked with different choreographers and different directors prior to wanting to start my own company. And that was probably 10 years of working with different choreographers to understand what it was that I was making that was different or was unique to me. But I do think that the people who I worked with fundamentally influenced where I ended up being as a choreographer. So the more work you can be in as a creative, the better. So if you can get involved in third year's projects, if you can be in a PhD student's research project, practical research project, if you can be in an amateur production or get involved in a community production, the more that will feed into understanding what it is that makes up you as an artist, because you will explore different ways in which other people work in order to understand what it is you make, whether you like it or not. I mean, I've been in people's work where I haven't quite enjoyed the process or it hasn't quite clicked with me, but I've still learned something from that process. And I think that's really important, to be as open as possible to all those experiences. Whether you're in a production role or whether you're in front of the camera or in front of the audience, I think both sides can teach you something, you know. So yeah, trying to sort of get involved in as many projects as possible whilst you're a student is great for understanding who you are when you leave as an artist. I know it seems obvious, but it's just like jumping in with both feet, I think. So yeah, the dancers I worked with, which was Richard Alston, a VTOL dance company, Vertical Takeoff and Landing, who were incredibly physical, and they did lots of flying low work and contact work, and they worked a lot with film, dance and film, or narrative and film. They really influenced the work I made, and Richard Alston's work influenced me in the way in which I mobilized the spine. So there was a particular kind of aesthetic choices that I started to make in my own work because of working with him. Yeah, so there's lots of different influences that then start to create something that's unique about you. I hope I've made that clear. Yeah, so I'll just show you. So in 2011, I took to Edinburgh a duet, and it was the first time that I had made a work that was critiqued by the press. So the press were there, and it was a press night and all of this stuff, and it was a real kind of, it was a different level. I'd made work for my friends and student kind of sharings and postgraduate sharings, because I did an MA at Middlesex University. So I'd done lots of sharings and scratch performances, but this was the first time I'd actually put my work out to an audience. It was a duet piece, 45 minutes long. And it was that moment where you hand over your work to a public audience and to a critical audience as well. And it was also the first time I got a really, really strong response, and it kind of changed things for me. So I was really lucky because it opened gateways to getting more funding and to developing my work. But I also think, more importantly, it was the time when I discovered what it was that was unique about my style. Now, this is just a little excerpt, if you don't mind sitting through it with a Mars bar and a cappuccino. This is a little excerpt from Hold that I showed in Edinburgh. It's this section, if I just give you a tiny bit of background, if you'll indulge me, was based on, and if I can just go back. So this dance is based on The Falling Soldier by Robert Capa. He's very famous, for those who don't know, he's a very famous conflict photographer. So he would go around the world as a journalist, and he, for example, he was on the he was at the D-Day landings. He was actually in one of the flat-bottomed crafts that landed on Omaha Beach. He was actually there taking pictures. The pictures are extraordinary. But in this particular picture, it's the falling, so it's actually capturing the moment between life and death, supposedly, because some people think it's a fake, but the life and death of a militiaman in the Spanish Civil War. He's a loyalist, and he's Robert Capa supposedly in a trench slightly lower down, capturing this soldier as he is taken. It's a very famous photograph, and kind of like about 10 years ago, I think it was, maybe even longer than that, it was questioned as to whether it was an authentic moment or whether it was staged. But whether it was staged or not, I still think it's a really, really powerful moment. So how does that translate choreographically? Well, in this particular section of the show, I wanted the dancers, they're dancing to a piece by Arvo Pärt, an Estonian composer, called Cantata in the Memory of Benjamin Britten. And what is so beautiful about it with this photograph is that it's a series of descending scales. So as the music builds, you hear this scale repeated and repeated and repeated. I think it's a catatonic scale, something like that. I'm not a musician, but it was a series of descending scales, and as the dancers continually fall, I kind of replace and repeat the pattern so that it accumulates, if that makes sense. So the choreography accumulates with the descending scales in the music. That's kind of the idea, but they're constantly in a state of tip or fall, and they constantly replace each other in space, almost like a shadow of each other, constantly replacing. So I hope that comes across in the piece. Anyway, I will show you this. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long, so do grab a donut whilst you're watching this. So I worked out whilst you were on the internet, whilst you were watching that it's called tintinnabulae. Oh, the scales that Arvo Pähr works with. It's a particular kind of resonance as it goes down. But that, for those who are doing film or theatre production, that was shot on a Canon 5D MK2 on a track, and that's, I think, what really affected the way in which we shot it, because we could keep the dancers head to toe in the frame and get far back enough and track with the dancers as they moved across the stage. And I think that really, I don't know, it completely changed the way in which we viewed the piece through the lens rather than panning. So we could sort of stay with them, and I felt as if it was, I don't know, it felt more visceral. It felt more we were with the dancers, if you know what I mean, through the eye of the lens. So yeah, I really enjoyed making that work. It was great, and we used film production students from the University of Northampton who worked on behind the camera and also were, runners, etc., and lighting technicians and things. So that was a really positive kind of collaboration, really. Yeah, really lovely memory of that work. So we're coming to the end. You cheer.
No, not at all.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Sort of just to sort of tie up, really, I wanted to sort of ask maybe Alex's students or Madison or Simona. I've just got a bit of a question to ask you, really. If I go to my final slide. And this maybe it's too big to talk about now. Maybe it's something you do want to talk about. I don't know. But I would say, what is your ideal career path? That sort of jot down on your notebooks. What is your ideal career path? And I always think, be blue skies about it. If you want to be a stage actor or you want to be a screen actor, yeah, it's tough. It's really, really tough. I'll give you an example. In dance, there are currently 4,500 dance undergraduates training as we speak, and there are 15,000 quality jobs in dance across the UK and Europe. Only maybe 5,000 of those are in performance. So you can see, probably, it's extremely, as each year goes, you've got all those graduates coming out. It's an extremely competitive market with not many opportunities to really, hit Manchester United or whatever, to hit Chelsea, to be at the top of your game and get those big performance jobs. However, across the sector, there are many, many more opportunities for you to showcase what it is you do. And I think if you do want to go for those top elite moments and you do want to, perform with Rambert or at the National Theatre or whatever, they're not bad ambitions to have. But what you need to think is you need to equip yourself with the skills to be able to hit that level. And in doing so, you'll find a whole world of opportunities in learning those things. You'll find a whole world of opportunities and employment opportunities as you are trying to find those elite moments, those moments that are, if you like, reaching for your goal, your ultimate goal. And I think that's what I have learned, that the things that pull me in the tributaries have been the most fulfilling and the most interesting. Even if I've wanted to perform for Rambert or I've wanted to perform for Netherlands Dance Theatre, if that's what I wanted to do when I graduated, to equip myself to be able to do that found me a whole world of other things, and that have been really fulfilling and really incredible and have been life-changing. So I suppose that, it's like, don't be shy of wanting to do those, to plump for that, to perhaps set your goals high, but also recognize that in trying to set your goals high, that lots of other things will come from that, because you will develop a discipline and a rigor and a practice that will get you work. And I think that is, I hope that makes sense. But anyway, so what would be your ideal career path? And then working backwards, what skills do you think you need to be equipped with in order to sustain that career in that area? So that's the other thing about sustainability. How do we sustain our career paths? How do we, because a dancer at 21 or an actor at 21 is a very different person at 44. So both physically in the way they look, but also in terms of mentally and experience wise, and they bring different qualities to the job. So I think you've got to think, how do you sustain those skills and what do you need to be equipped with? So maybe you can jot those things down. I mean, maybe should we say 5 minutes, Rachel, so to sort of jot some things down, and if anyone wants to feedback, they can unmute and maybe feedback what they think they need to do in order to equip themselves before they graduate. Do you know what I mean? So should we give that a try, if anyone's brave enough to try this?
Yeah, let's give it a go.
Yeah, should we give it a go? So it's sort of like, get your notebooks out. What would be your ideal career path, and working backwards, what skills do you think you need to be equipped with in order to sustain a career in that area? Whatever that might be. Yeah, and it'd be interesting for me to hear other people's expertise on this. So I'll
Would it be helpful if they put on their microphone so that we can actually hear
that
them?
would be so terrific if people
Even
could
their
put on their mic.
cameras too.
If you feel confident enough to put your camera on, it'd be lovely to see your faces. But if not, just chatting to us about, these things. And the other thing is, if you have any questions, even though I've talked for so long, if you have any questions about working in the arts or whatever, then please do also ask questions. That's the other thing. So maybe jotting those things down. What do you think, Alex? Do you think your gang are going to be able to feedback a bit?
Oh, that's my email.
We've got radio silence.
Alex, are you there? Any chance you can answer, please?
They've
Or
all gone
Madison, or
they've all
someone?
gone to the pub.
I know.
Yeah, I can answer if you'd like.
Had a girl.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. So I mean, this is like, if I could do literally anything, like go all out there, will be on Netflix. That would be incredible.
Right.
Honestly, it's pretty hard to tell you what I'd have to do beforehand to get to this point, because that's a bit mad. But
what would you do on Netflix? Sorry, Madison. What would you do? Would you? What is he creating something or?
Well, I've always been inspired by just actors in big TV shows, and I mean, that's like just such a crazy goal, but I think I just need to be putting myself out there more. I've always struggled with that. Like as an actor, I always struggled to come out of my shell. So I think maybe literally just confidence over the next few years, and just get to a point where I know what I'm capable of. And in that time, just keep practicing. I mean, I don't know what else to say, to be honest.
I think obviously the thing about all of these the big shows is that the actors in big shows, or even small part actors in big shows, would they have agents.
Yeah.
And it's the first step is to make sure that you get a good agency behind you, the agents that are going to push you in front of the right auditions and the right directors. So in order to be able to get on their books, you need to be at the top of your game in relation to your own one-to-one presentation. Don't look at me for being on top of my game with one-to-one presentation. However, for yourselves, I'm a dancer, so I can get away with it. But for yourself, those one-to-one presentations you've got to be really confident and really on top of what you're doing. But also your marketing materials, your marketing assets, as they like to say, your marketing assets need to also reflect who you are and the kind of work that you want to be involved in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But also, as an actor, you have to be honest about where you sit. For example, I heard there was a brilliant interview with, what's his name? I'm rubbish with names. It will come to me. John Malkovich. And he said, I'll never be the leading man. Interestingly, he was cast as the leading man in Dangerous Liaisons, was it? Which he thought was the oddest casting ever. He himself thought that was the oddest casting. But I think he always thought, as an actor, he'll never be cast as the leading man because of the way he looks. He's got a kind of strange eye, that one eye goes in one direction, one eye goes in the other. And he's a bit quirky and a bit strange looking. Yeah. And also his temperament was quite strange. The way he said he was socially awkward when he first started to audition, very socially awkward. So I think you've got to understand or be honest about where you're at and what you are, and be honest to yourself about that as an actor. I think that's much more important as an actor than it is as a dancer, interestingly.
Yeah, I see that actually.
Because who you put yourself in front of and how you market yourself is going to be really important, isn't it? And are you the quirky type? Are you the girl next door? Are you the, and it's not about typecasting yourself, but it is about understanding what would be your strength. Yeah.
Can I join in a little bit here?
Go for it, Rachel.
I just wanted to say that in 2 weeks' time, on the 10th of November, I think it's the 10th, or is it the 12th? We've got Mandy.com coming in to give advice about your online platform and about choosing an agency and what they can do for you. So that fits into that. I think when you're not sure of quite exactly where you see yourself, that's the opportunity to try everything. So experiment, volunteer, take on board any opportunities that come your way when people are asking for extras, or if they're asking for you to help in a student film. Put yourself out there, because the more things you do, the more you'll find out that you want to do, but also you're gaining yourself more experience that then people can look at later on. And you never know, a student film might win an award so that you can gain a credit, because if and it has happened with some of the things made at the university, they've gone forward to the Royal Television Society Awards and students have won the awards. So then you can credit that you was part of this film that won the RTS award of 2018 or whatever it was. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah, definitely. I've written down that the thing I really need to do is just come out of my shell more, just push myself out there. So I completely agree. I'm just going to have to start working on that.
So I'll drag you out, Madison. It's fine.
But Madison, I think it's really interesting because if you look at somebody like David Mitchell, his social awkwardness has become his kind of comedy strength.
Oh,
do you know what I mean? So actually, you could say to yourself, well, actually, that awkwardness or that shyness or that, and the same with Olivia Colman. She's made a career on being slightly awkward and shy, and it's very funny and it's very cool and it's very unassuming, and yet. Do you get where I'm coming from? So I say, saying you don't need to be the extrovert. If Madison is something that's quirky, shy, and needs more confidence, make something of that. Could that be something that you draw on? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I really do.
And it becomes almost like a persona that you experiment with, which is what Rachel's saying. Experiment with stuff, play it. Make that a persona for a while, see how it feels, and it might come across as being something that you can play with. So I just think it is about understanding what's unique about you and actually not trying to be something else, but being something that you can work around and extend upon.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then
I do.
Yeah. And then like Bill Nighy, again, quite a strange, quirky character, not seen. But now, I mean, the roles he does are often, you know, center stage, almost leading man roles sometimes, you know, sort of open shirt slacks type roles, which you never normally have seen him in, you know. So I think it's about sort of saying, well, you can extend on from where you naturally are, and sort of build yourself a persona that then you can work away from. Like, I would say it's like a stone in water. You drop the stone in and then it ripples out and suddenly projects, you know. But I think what Rachel is saying is get involved with as much as you can, for, you know, by hook or by crook, you will start to build that inner confidence. I think there's a difference between inner confidence and outer confidence as well, because someone can be really inner confident, but actually outwardly their persona is something very different. Does that make sense? But I think it's much more important to have an inner confidence, knowing who you are when you walk into a audition experience or whatever, than it is to have outer confidence, but that's fake. That's coming from something that's not really there. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's
that's really helpful.
Yeah.
How about Simona? Because Simona, I think, level 1. I think Simona is my student on here. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm here.
Yes, it is Simona. I wasn't sure if it was you. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Simona. What course are you doing?
I'm with Madison. We are both together. Media performance.
Media performance. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you in front of the camera then, or behind the camera?
What do you mean?
Would you perform for camera, or are you?
I don't know. It's like we do everything right now.
Do you? Right.
We
Okay.
do all of them. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
You don't know. You haven't got a sense. Did you want to be an actor?
I thought I was gonna be, but
you don't know yet.
Now I'm not so sure anymore.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you want? Do you do presenting, Rachel?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Simona and Madison are both level 1 students. I ought to just let you know that, because ideally they're level 3, but they're just beginning, so they are just starting out. I mean, Simona particularly has come from a completely different background, so she's just been introduced to theatre and presenting in the TV studio. So in time, once she's been more exposed, she might have a better understanding of where her strengths are. But at the minute, it's all new, and she is having to go behind the camera. She will be in time.
Yeah, I think the more perspective, I don't know what you think, Rachel, but the more perspectives with which you see what other people do, it helps you understand what you do. So say, for example, like you say, being behind the camera, understanding what it is that's going on behind the camera will make you understand how to present better in front of the camera. So it's almost like putting yourself in lots of different roles, Simona, is part of your undergraduate experience. Actually not knowing what your ideal path is absolutely fine. There is something about dancers, because it's such a short career in terms of dance performance, that often we understand whether we want to be a dance performer very young. So often, you know, people go to the Royal Ballet School at age 11. Do you get what I mean? And that's a very different experience, you know, wanting to dance at 11, 12, 13, 14, and, you know, up to 25, you're a mid-career dancer, you know, at 25. I'm sure people are joining your courses, Rachel, and they are 25. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a totally different world in that sense. So Simona, not knowing what it is you want to do when you've graduated and just testing out all these different things, I think is part of what's wonderful about being an undergraduate, you know. And you've got the resources there. That's what's so fantastic, is having the resources to try things out.
And explore. It comes back to that word: explore, try, experiment, and just have a go.
Completely. Yeah. And also, I think what's wonderful about what I found with my undergraduate course and my MA actually that I did at Middlesex was that wonderful safe space with people that you get on with, where you can fail, where things just don't work, and you just go, oh, well, that's okay, because you're not under the same pressures. Sometimes you are with assessments, but not under the same pressures during your learning as you would be if you were in a commercial setting. So it's about understanding that it's about success and failure, but embracing the challenges as well as you don't have to be brilliant the whole time, is what I'm trying to say. You can fail, and failing is fine, and that's actually part of the fun of it, you know. Yeah, I don't know whether I'm making sense there, Rachel.
You are. Shall we see if we can get Alex Donaldson and his team to speak? Hello, the acting course.
If they've not.
Yeah, I think they've just left the computer in a room and gone to lunch, as you said.
Oh, bless. Alex, are you there? No, they are not. Maybe they've had, would they have technical issues in a classroom with that? Don't know. Don't know.
Hello, we're here.
Oh, you're here. Oh, fantastic. Brilliant.
So what would be your ideal career path, guys, up at Bedford? I've muted again. Maybe they are having technical issues.
Oh,
oh, we're back. Hello.
Hello.
Hiya.
I'm not going to speak on behalf of everyone, but I think there's a bit of like a mixture of people who want to go into like performance-based stuff. I'm personally excited about education and like pedagogy and stuff like that. So I'd like to be a teacher.
Yeah. And so, what's your name?
Oh, Ruth.
Ruth.
Yeah.
Hi, Ruth. Thank you for feeding back. So, Ruth, if you want to go into teaching, is that in drama or is that in theatre? Is that where you want to be a, say, I mean, you know, go to a drama department in a school, or is it that you want to be an academic? What are you thinking?
In a secondary school for sure. Teaching drama and maybe a bit of dance.
Oh, okay, cool. So, what do you see as being the sort of things that you want to get involved in your undergraduate course that would see you through to achieving that? Because that's quite it's a very realistic goal, but actually quite a competitive environment, because there aren't many jobs in dance and drama in schools. They're long term, as in if you get a dance teacher, they're normally there until they retire, yeah, or a drama teacher. So actually, and when you do get those roles, they're very competitive. Lots of people are going for them. So what is it you're thinking of doing to be able to equip yourself to be able to step into a role like that? What do you think you need to kind of do?
Me personally, I actually already work in a school, so I'm going down different routes into like how to further my career through that way. I've worked in a school for about 3 years now, so I kind of know the different processes. I'm in sort of talks with the head teacher of my school, etc., to do like my teacher training and things like that. So I am quite a planned out person. But if I wasn't as organized as I am, I'd probably look into like any like work experience, teacher training, anytime I could just get into a school or start teaching some content, teaching some lessons for free, basically, just to get the experience, see if I enjoyed it, and then I would go on to qualify from there.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting, if I can not now, one of the things that's really interesting about what we do in theatre and in dance is that directing involves pedagogy and choreography involves pedagogy. So just by making theatre and dance or performance, you have to communicate effectively with others and mobilize them and engage them and get the best out of them. So actually, this is something I'm really passionate about. Actually, to be a really good teacher is to also effectively be good at what it is you do in that particular art form. Do you see what I mean? Those two things kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like if you're not passionate about the thing that you are trying to get other people to be passionate about, then you're not going to be very successful. If you love something, it's really easy for people to, even if they don't love it, to appreciate the fact that you do, and that's something that brings you joy and brings you catharsis. And I think that's really important in a teacher, a director, a performer, in a person.
Yeah, definitely, and the ability to effectively communicate and engage a group, I don't necessarily say that I'm an expert in that, but to effectively communicate and engage a group and make sure that, you know, that they are on side with you is something you need in a classroom as much as you would need if you were working with professional actors or professional dancers. And I think there is a crossover between teaching skills and directing skills, or teaching skills and community dance, or choreographer, the role of choreographer. So I think that, yeah, those lots and lots of different strategies under your belt to be able to engage and excite and inspire the people who are learning with you. Yeah, because I think effective people management in the performing arts or in production, you know, where you're working with a team, I think is really important. You know, how people management is incredibly important. HR, I think, is underestimated. HR in the independent arts is underestimated, and also people management. You know, how do we manage people in a way that's sensitive, constructive, but also disciplined? You know, I think that, yeah. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that, Ruth?
Yeah, I absolutely would, and I think that that's even more important when you're dealing with children who don't have the skill set to be aware that you need to manage them because you want what's best for them. I guess as adults, we kind of realize that we are all in the same, like in the same place, on the same level. And if someone is imparting knowledge on us, then we kind of appreciate that a little bit more the older we get. When you're younger, you don't necessarily appreciate or understand that as much, that skill as much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think because with the onset, I mean, without getting too philosophical about it, Ruth, but with the onset of the digital age, there has become what I would call, and there's a book written about it, the death of authority. So the idea that there is, you know, an authority or an expert in the room that tells you what to do has obviously completely collapsed, because we're all experts now. We all have opinions on things. We can all feed into, you know, chat rooms and feeds and stuff like that. We all, on social media, we all have an opinion about something. So I think young people, what the challenge for you, Ruth, as an educator, is to try and establish yourself as an authority in a, not authoritarian, but an authority in the space, by being expert, but having the openness to welcome and include them and value their contribution to that session, whatever session you're running. And I think that balance is what, you know, when you get the really, really good teachers in the space and you think, wow, you know, that the inspiring leaders in the space, that's what they can do so well, is value the people who are in the room, like you say, understand where they're coming from, but also bring their own authority, their own expertise to it, and meet everybody halfway. Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a really brilliant contribution, Ruth, and I really hope that your aspirations, but you know, to develop a drama department or whatever, a dance department in your school would be amazing.